We are actually focused on what really matters, keeping the government open, helping our fellow Americans who have suffered from natural disasters recently, and supporting our farmers and so to protect our food supply chain. And that is it until President Trump is sworn in and settled, and I think that's the appropriate action.
Well, President Trump, the president-elect, had said before he's sworn in, he actually would like to see one more thing happen, and that was a lifting of the debt ceiling for a period of time, potentially to 2029, or eliminating it altogether. Obviously, Congresswoman, that is not included in this package, but it was included last night when the package went down. Was that a miscalculation on the debt ceiling? Can it be addressed before he takes office?
Well, I think it could have been. I think what President Trump was saying was that a lot of the spending that President Biden did has caught up to us, and he didn't want to have the debt ceiling hovering over him in his first initial 6 months when he's trying to do energy policy, when he's trying to do the border policies, when he's trying to get the tax bill across the finish line to preserve the tax cuts that our businesses and individuals and families have seen over the last few years that have created millions of jobs and lifted middle-class wages. I think that it would have been a lot, and it would have gave Democrats another tool to hold over President Trump's head. So I think he wanted to kind of come in there without that over him, which I can understand. Unfortunately, there were 35 within our party who voted, I mean, maybe even more than 35, that voted against it. And those are the so-called people who claim to be President Trump's allies. But what I will say is today it seems that Republicans are aligned, that we're united, and we're going to go in here and prevent a government shutdown and do the basics of what needs to be done to get us through the next few months until we have our trifecta sworn in and settled.
Well, you describe as the Republicans now having coalesced around what to do here. But Elon Musk, who, of course, was vocally opposed to the first iteration from Mike Johnson, has suggested it's unclear if this is a Republican bill or a Democrat one. Is his voice in all of this just adding an unhelpful layer of complication?
Well, as you know, President Trump endorsed the exact same bill yesterday, but it did have the debt limit, as you mentioned. But even without the debt limit, it's still a very good piece of legislation. It's the best that you're going to get at this moment, and it does what we need it to do. So I imagine that President Trump will support this final project. And I think that there's also been an understanding that we want to work with President Trump to address this debt limit issue, but we also want to see some savings, and that's where the Doge comes in, Elon Musk and the Doge, who wants to actually reduce wasteful spending, which there is a lot of, unfortunately, in federal government. And we all want to achieve that goal. I think we may have differences of where those cuts should come from, but I think that this sets it up nicely for us when we're all in office come January.
Well, I do have a question, Congresswoman, about the office that Mike Johnson will be holding. Obviously, he will remain a representative from Louisiana, but our question is whether he will remain as Speaker of the House. You have expressed frustration multiple times this week about the way leadership has conducted this entire negotiation. Does he, in your mind, deserve to keep the gavel?
Well, I think that's going to be a conversation for tomorrow. I will say that I've been tremendously frustrated by this process, the way that the Speaker made a deal with the Democrats without coming to the conference first to let us know what that should have been done first, to come to the conference to get buy-in and get consensus before shaking hands with Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. So I am frustrated with the lack of communication that we're receiving from our leadership, and I'm also frustrated that there hasn't been enough emphasis in helping the rank-and-file members score small legislative wins, whether that be not things that don't cost money, that are not controversial, and would go a long way in us being able to deliver for our constituencies. So I think there needs to be a larger conversation, and I think many rank-and-file members may feel the way I do after this week. But I think one thing's for sure, this needs to be run a lot better next year. And I feel like a lot of us have these concerns that we want to express, and we hope that we're heard.
Well, so as we think about who would theoretically be able to run things better, it's a question of that, Congresswoman, but it's also a question if any other individual can get to 218 votes. We saw how this went when McCarthy was ousted. It took multiple people attempting to be Speaker for Mike Johnson to get it. Is that an avoidable scenario this time if it's not to be him?
And that is the issue. We have such a slim majority, so the question is always going to be who can get to 218. I think many of us would like to resolve our differences and have a better understanding of how we're going to proceed and help all rank-and-file members, not just a small select group of squeaky wheels in the next Congress. And hopefully we'll be able to have that discussion and get some clarity so we can move forward united as a team.
There's been some, unclear if it's been jokes or not, Congresswoman, things percolating on social media. Even Elon Musk himself was asked about it with Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, whether someone like Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy could end up being Speaker of the House. Would you want anyone who's not a member of the House of Representatives to serve in that position?
I don't see that happening. I think that's not very serious. I think that we can resolve these problems within our own conference and elect a speaker who is going to represent all the membership and listen to the concerns and views so we can move collected and united. I don't see looking outside of the House of Representatives as a viable solution.
And finally, Congresswoman, I know you need to leave us to run to the floor as this vote is about to happen. But given how hard this week has been, how optimistic are you about the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and how many bills realistically are going to be able to pass with ease?
Well, look, I think the big one is going to be the reconciliation package that we're hoping to address energy, unleashing our domestic production, repealing some of those unnecessary and burdensome regulations that have stymied energy production in this country, border security, which is so desperately needed, as we all know. And then the third piece of that would be the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, extending it and making improvements. Remember, a lot of these provisions have already expired. Some have sunset. The rest expires at the end of 2025. We're talking about the corporate tax rate, the income tax rate, the doubling of the standard deduction, the doubling of the child tax credit, and so many other important tax provisions that affect our economy and American working families. And so I think that needs to be coupled all together in the first reconciliation. I do get concerns that if we split up tax from the other items, that we may jeopardize those tax cuts expiring, which would really be problematic for our economy and working and middle-class Americans. And so I make the push to say that this should be all done in the beginning, because what the tax people want and what the border states want and the energy-producing states want, everybody will get something, and we can make a deal there. I think that if you split it up, it makes it a lot difficult, and that tax will be in the back end and may be forgotten of, and that's too much of a risk to take.
All right. Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis of New York, thank you so much for your time joining us.